Hello, crypto world. Welcome to the Chart Historian. My name is Justin, and on this channel, I delve deep into crypto charts, exploring chart structures, fractals, and patterns. So in this video, I'd like to talk about the Casper chart. I'd like to talk about where we are in the macro structure and what we should expect to take place in the coming days. So for those of you who are not familiar with my videos on Casper, it is my belief that Casper has a repetitive macro structure. Now, to view that macro structure, we need to go all the way back to the very beginning of the Casper chart. So this is on a very short time frame. Now, I'm using CoinTrader Pro because it allows me to go back to the very beginning on a small time frame. So this is on an hour candle. The chart starts in 2021, and it begins with a move up. Now, this is the first bull run that takes place on the Casper chart. So price moves up. Now, it has this correction right here before continuing its move up to a peak. After this peak, it enters into a different phase. I call this a topping structure, where price begins to roll over. After it has exited this structure where price begins to turn over, it begins to fall aggressively. It comes to a bottom right here, and then it moves back up and it enters a new phase. This phase right here is a sideways range-bound time. I divide this into three separate fractals. After this sideways range-bound time, it begins to move back up into a bull run. So it has this small correction right here, and then it continues to move up, and this is where the Casper chart begins to repeat. So this correction right here is this correction. So just as this one had a correction and then it comes to a peak, well, we see the same thing happen here. There's a correction and it continues to move up, it comes to a peak. So just as there was this topping structure here where price is no longer moving up, so that takes place over here. It took place lower than it did this time around. Now, this brings up an interesting point. So when a structure or a fractal repeats, the basic idea repeats, but the timing, the height, and the depth, those will always be unique. Those do not copy over. That can make for unique iterations of the same structure, the same fractal. It can allow for a fractal to play out on a larger time frame or a smaller time frame. It could also allow for a part of a fractal to move up higher than another part did, or lower, or the timing to change as it plays out. So all those things that I just mentioned, those are dynamic features which we should expect as these fractals play out. So this topping structure plays out over here. It then declines. Now, it did not decline as deep as it did this time. That's because the timing, height, and depth are unique every single time it plays out. If you notice that at the bottom here there's this bounce, well, we see the same bounce take place just on a bigger time frame, a bigger scale than it did over here. So after this bounce, price moves back up just like it did here, and this sideways range-bound time, which is divided into three separate fractals. This first fractal basically consists of two waves. Well, we see that take place here, wave 1 and wave 2, after which price moves up, it drops, goes sideways, moves back up again, creating this bowl-type structure. We see the same thing over here. Price moves up, it drops, moves sideways, moves back up again, creating a bowl-type structure. So after this bowl structure, price kind of winds its way down to a point, which we see here. It moves down to a point, and then we have this small little tiny bounce that takes place. We see that right here where price moves up again and does a bounce. So here in this first iteration, price moves flat and then drops. This time around, it didn't move flat and then dropped. It just kind of slowly dropped down to a point, just like it did here. It moves to a point before moving into the next fractal. So this next fractal is a much larger bounce than, say, this one was. We see that here, that bounce, and then after that bounce, the bull run takes place. So in that bull run, we have that first small correction. We have that over here. This bull run Casper just knocks it out of the park. I mean, price just flies up. So we have this correction that takes place right here, which is the same as this one, and it's the beginning structure of the Casper chart over here. It comes to a peak, and then just like it moves down here into that topping structure and here, well, this time, I mean, it just crashed. It was like a falling star. And that topping structure is way, way down here. Now, price continues to move lower before entering into or moving back up a little into this sideways range-bound time that we see take place over here in this part of the structure. But over here, time begins to move much slower. So I was on a 1-hour candle. Over here, it begins to play out so slow that you, on many parts, need to be on a day candle to see it. What I'd like to do is I would like to jump over to today's chart and examine where we are at in this macro structure. So here we are on today's chart, and just as I pointed out to you back over here about that small little tiny bounce that takes place here and here, well, we see that same thing taking place here. So after this bounce, price, in this case, winded down to a point, just like it did on the second iteration of this structure. So the first one, it went flat and then dropped. The second time around, after this bounce right here, it winded down to a point. And if we examine this ending portion of this structure right here, we see it moves up, moves back down again, goes flat, and then drops. Actually, there's this little tiny move up right there too we should make note of. Today's chart, we see the same thing play out. So it moves up, moves down, and then this move up right here is that little tiny one, which should be over like this. This time around, it went flat longer than it originally did, and then it drops. So while the timing, height, and depth are unique, the basic idea is playing out. This one moved up higher than it originally did, but that can happen with timing, height, and depth being unique. So where are we now? So we see this move up right here. Well, it is my belief we are now entering a new structure. We are now entering this fractal, or if you will, this fractal right here, which is the same thing, a larger bounce before the bull run. Now, I don't know which iteration it will choose to follow. It may follow this one closer, or it may follow this one. We'll have to see how that plays out. If you notice both of them, so this one moves up and then it pulls back. This one, you have to zoom in a bit more. You see it moves up and then it pulls back a little before continuing its move up higher. Well, we are likely seeing that same phenomenon beginning to play out. So I'm going to make a prediction. It is my prediction that Casper is going to do a bounce. Now, I don't know how high it will move up. I don't know how long it will go sideways. I don't know how deep the decline will go. We have different examples. So here, it did not decline lower than here. However, the second time it plays out, over here, it does go lower than here. So we'll have to see how that plays out. But it is my prediction that Casper will do a bounce. The timing, height, and depth are going to be original, which will make for a basic original iteration of this bounce. It's not going to be exact compared to either one of those. It may choose to resemble, or it may end up resembling one more than the other. So that is my prediction. It's going to take some time for this to play out. We'll have to see how it ends up shaking out. So there you have it. That's my prediction. If you enjoyed this video, it'd be much appreciated if you hit that thumbs up button. You know, this is not financial advice. I'm not a financial advisor. But if you did enjoy this type of TA, you're not going to find this anywhere else. So if you haven't hit that subscribe button, you should think about hitting it. I'm going to continue to provide updates on this chart as this chart continues to develop. We have exciting days ahead. We are getting closer to that bull run. There will be a new bull run, folks. Just need to work through this overall structure. We need to get through that bounce before price begins to start marching up again. Well, so glad you caught this video. I hope you catch my next one. Have a great day, and bye for now.